Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to the comment you made just before Laura's question. You're talking about classroom success rate, and certainly I agree, 40% failure is not, a good thing to have, and you want to change that. But we've all heard horror stories in the K through 12 system across the nation, how teaching to the test and teachers who at school districts who will modify their expectations in order to satisfy this standard that's been imposed upon them. So what kind of safeguards will we be putting into place to prevent like the grade inflation or this kind of problem that we've seen at the K-12 level?
Actually, the question is, what kind of safeguards are going to be put into place so that we don't follow the worst case scenarios in K through 12, where in fact they've even had scandals about people changing test scores. I think the ultimate solution, and they are already talking about this, so those who know a lot about K through 12, I want you to know that Arnie Duncan has already told the universities that we're headed the same direction in terms of the standardized tests, but we already have some. Obviously, your professional programs have a standardized test. Some people have talked about using the GREs as a way to measure what a student has learned over the 4 years. Doesn't get into individual courses, but there is this, and I haven't created it, so I'm not taking responsibility for it, but a national drive now to hold universities accountable. Where you've first seen it hit was on the for-profit institutions, and the federal government has come down on them with both feet. But it's our turn now, and it's all about student success and how you measure it. For universities, that's really difficult because we have tended to look at a university education, but in a very laissez-faire manner, as we build a curriculum, and then it's up to the student. I mean, we really haven't worried about those graduation rates and the retention rates. So there's a lot of difficulty putting this into play.
So the federal government says we have to lower tuition and graduate more students. A-Board says the same thing. Where does our legislature sit on that? Because until our legislature is more higher education friendly, I would not want your job.
Yeah, the question is, if in fact the feds and the state are essentially asking for more baccalaureates, lower tuition, is the state going to come along and increase funding? I don't think the state is going to do that, and for two reasons. One is the money is simply not there. There are so many calls on the state's budget that it's hard to get education to the top of that list. But the second reason is this is Arizona, and nobody is going to raise taxes, right? Now, in fact, they have raised taxes because they force us to raise tuition. To me, that's the same thing, but it gets them off the hook. I don't see in the next 3 or 4 years a massive change in the nature of our legislature.
So they will not respond to pressure from the federal government?
No.
Maybe this question's for Liz. How are you going to help deans protect their programs if all their faculty want to run off from this university?
I don't think that the question is, how are we going to protect deans if all their faculty want to defect over to the university college? I use the word defect. I don't think that's going to be a real problem. First of all, we're going to start small. Secondly, the majority of faculty don't teach all freshman classes. The majority of faculty teach a wide range. How many of you teach at all levels? 1 through 400 levels? Most of you. I think there's very little likelihood. We're going to have to see how it all kind of sorts out. But I think that there will be an interest in that portion of the FTE coming into the university college, and you can be a faculty member in that, and you're a faculty member in your own unit. And I don't think that there will be that many takers. And we're gonna be very, very careful about who comes into this. I think one of the questions that came up earlier was regarding quality. And I really have to emphasize that Karen Pugliese and I have had many hours of conversations about making sure that we raise the bar and that we don't water down and that we don't just encourage faculty to do grade inflation. You all have the advantage of having licensure exams. So at the end of a student's program, if they don't get through the NCLEX, they're not going to become a nurse. And it's the other programs that don't have that kind of accountability where I think we see just quite a bit more risk. I think that's one of the reasons why, your college has, less risk and higher retention and all that because of all the accountability. We've got to make sure that student learning is improved, not deleted. Because if we're trying to prepare graduates for the 21st century global workforce, we've got to create innovators and inventors and out-of-the-box thinkers. And so we've got to find a way to challenge our students more, not less. But anyway, I don't think it's going to be an issue, but I guess we'll just have to play it out.
Just to add to what Liz just said, I think there will be people, though, if you're a research active faculty member in your discipline, you are likely not going to have any interest at all in the university college because it is going to require more teaching and more time with students.
And more time with your team,
And more time with the team. If, however, you're not research active any longer and you're tenured, this may be a really exciting thing to get involved in. So we'll see how it actually turns out.
You may have already addressed this, and I'm sorry. I'm wondering, so we've talked a lot about faculty and our accountability to the student, which I firmly 100% believe in. However, on the flip side of that coin is that student accountability to maintaining those studies and teaching in, both nursing and in general ed. I see, students that choose to fraternize, choose to do stuff that makes them less accountable. But yeah, I still feel like I'm still accountable to do whatever I can to meet the needs of that student. And so if they're not successful by their own choice, I guess I'm kind of confused because there's always that.
The question is basically, along with accountability of faculty members, what about the accountability of the students? And students are going to crash and burn. I mean, there's just no question about that. And if we can push up the success rate, then I think that's really the right thing to do. But we'll never capture all of the students who end up in college. People in student affairs will tell you there are lots of students who come here as freshmen. They have no business being here. They're not interested in it. They did it because mom and dad thought it was a good idea. And there's nothing we can do to intrude on that.
Will that university college kind of help, I guess, funnel or filter or catch, I guess?
Yes, we hope to catch those students, and that's why we'll have, this year we have coaches working with freshmen. And in a sense, to catch them, some of them can be pushed into a different area of study. We can get far more pointed about advising. So one of the things we do now is a student comes to us as a freshman and indicates they want to go into engineering and can't do basic math. Somebody needs to tell that student, this is not the path of success. And so we'll do more of that.
And Roa's going to chime in here and talk a little bit about something that's very important to us, and that is in the university college, all the courses will have a requirement for mandatory attendance. And that doesn't mean that the student is going to always attend, but we want accountability. And we've got to find a way to hold students' feet to the fire and help them to help themselves. And so we can't say to every faculty member, you must require attendance in your freshman classes, but we do have data that says that students who attend class, mandatory attendance, actually do better. Duh. And so, Ro, why don't you talk about the Senate Council?
Yeah, the Faculty Senate is in the process of designing a new, The Faculty Senate is in the process of designing a new policy that all 100 level courses will have mandatory attendance. Part of that policy also speaks to the fact, though, that as faculty, we have a responsibility to get the student engaged in their own learning. And part of the PHILI program and one of the measures of student success will be how actively engaged we can get the students in their own learning process. Both the Senate and the Liberal Studies Committee is also in the process of looking at what should the student quality measures be, so we're not teaching to the test. But what would a successful NAU student look like? What metrics would we put in place to measure that so that it's not just passing a test, but how engaged are they as global citizens? And that's probably going to take us a good year to come up with those kinds of metrics and measurements. Thank you.
Will the retention rate of a particular program affect that department's general resource allotment from the university?
Yes.
Like, you know, and is there gonna be a sliding scale for that? So if a department already has 90% retention and another department has 50%, well, the other department has a lot more room to move up than the department that's already successful. So will the unsuccessful department get more resources? I mean, kind of wonder how that sliding scale works.
It's clear, and we haven't worked this out as we move in this direction of all of this performance funding and accountability. It will eventually reach down to the department level and individual faculty. I think that's where we're headed nationally. It's not going to happen overnight, but the reality would be that would be the case. But it's not a straight line, your retention is poor, therefore you get less funding. Actually, it might be the reverse. We need to put more money to an area we know that is not performing, rather than less. So just as an example of that thinking, the University College, we think we've got it on a budget which is doable, but suddenly the message we're putting out there is freshman year is important, and we're going to put some money to improve our performance at the freshman year.